Good morning and welcome into the Morning Burrito Podcast. I am Michael.
I'm Gabrielle.
And you are visiting for the first time alone.
That's true.
No boss daddy.
No.
Here today.
It's just me.
He's on vacation.
Vacation.
Well, actually, vacation's coming to an end.
Don't remind him of that. I don't know if he's listening.
I was going to say
vacation.
He's probably not listening. So today's podcast is going to be fun because we're going to be talking about something that doesn't really apply to me specifically. I mean, it applies to my kids, I suppose, but it applies to you because you are one. So we'll just tease that for a moment before we get there. But cool. Let's talk about your vacation. So you were on. Your family's been on vacation since last week, and you were on part of that. So how was the Hiawatha Trail?
Yeah, well, I'd never been to Montana before. And I was in Montana for like 20 minutes, so that was cool. Yeah, we rode on a really old railroad track road that's gravel now, and we rode bikes. And it was like so easy because it was downhill, so you could just coast.
That's great.
Yeah, it was like the best way.
Sounds
to go
like
biking.
Sort of fun, I guess.
It was fun. Yeah, I mean, like there was smoke in the air from the fires. Not good, but it made it smell like a campfire.
Yeah, I did hear while you were gone too.
Yeah, and like the pine trees, it smelled so good.
It was very, very smoky last week at the end of the week.
Yeah, now it's not even going to be 80 degrees today, so
perfect.
I'm here. That's perfect.
Yeah, when we walked out of our leaders meeting last night, it was nice and cool with a nice breeze, and it was like, I
baked bread the other day.
I don't remember what
like
this is
fall.
like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to be taking vacation for a few days, starting as soon as we're done with this, pretty much. And my daughter's returning from a month-long stay with my parents in Georgia, and my mom is tagging along, bringing her home, and she's going to stay for a few days, so that'll be nice. So yeah, it's vacation time for us after camp.
Yeah.
You had 2 camps.
I had 2 camps.
And you took vacation time for 2 camps.
Correct. So I had a good quiet weekend.
You're a glutton for punishment.
I'm glad there's coffee. It's all kind of hitting. I'm a little tired.
It's been like a week.
Yeah.
And you went on
last
vacation.
week I was like so busy getting ready to leave. And then last week it was not a recovery week. I was busy last week.
Vacation's supposed to like be relaxing.
It wasn't the whole week I was on vacation. Just forget it.
Whatever. All you people who take vacations and don't rest. I mean,
I don't know how you do it.
Well, the truth is I don't really rest on vacation either. I learned from my dad, like when you go on vacation, you stack as much stuff in as you can.
Yeah.
So that, you get to do as much as you can that you can't do when you're working.
True, but then you need a vacation from your vacation.
That's true.
And I never take vacation in the summer, but here I am, like, gone all summer, I feels like.
I do know several people who do, like, when they do, like, a 2-week vacation, they will set their vacation up in such a way that the last, like, 3-ish days are recovery days from the vacation.
I think I need that.
It's a very strange idea to me, but I guess it makes sense. Okay, so let's get into our show for this morning. And this is going to be an interesting discussion because it applies directly to you. And that's part of the reason why we're going to talk about it as you're on the show. I do want to say to our listeners and viewers, if you want Gabrielle to be a fixture on our show, we need to hear if you want her on the show.
Wow.
So if you do, make sure you put that in the comments that you want Gabrielle on the show more often. You can even say we want her on the show every week.
Wow.
And maybe we'll have to work this into your work week.
Right, because what your comment does, it helps the boss see that I should be here instead of volunteering my time like I am at the moment.
Correct.
Because this is not my job.
Well, and
but here I am.
We tried to record this yesterday because I knew I had to leave early for my pick up my family at the airport. It didn't work. We had some technical difficulties. So,
yes.
So you donated time on Monday, and now you're donating time on Tuesday.
I hope I'm awake enough to make this worth it.
Oh, you're awake. You had to help with the chickens. So
yes, it was something. Okay, keep going. Let's go. Let's get to this question. Please tell me if you want me back.
Yes, please tell.
But
I think people are going to want you back. I really do. So again, thank you for doing that. It's great to have you this morning and not me by myself. So today we are going to talk about life as a PK, as we say in the Christian culture. And the idea of PK is very simple, pastor's kid. And in the church, there are stereotypes that we're going to get to. There are stressors that are put on PKs that, normal Christian kids may not necessarily experience. Really, the only thing that's like being a PK is a missionary kid, although that's a whole nother level.
Different too. Yeah.
Being raised in other countries and things of that nature, it's just a whole different ballgame. As a English-speaking American kid raised in, Ethiopia or something, I mean, that's a whole different thing. But PK life is different. It's not normal in a lot of ways. Even for people who are really heavy church people, it's still different being a PK. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff because it is something you've lived with for, should I say?
Quite a while.
More than 2 decades. We'll just say that.
That's true.
What
Two
are
and a half decades.
almost 26.
Yeah, okay.
You had your half birthday this week, right?
Nah,
or next week?
It's in a couple weeks.
Couple weeks. We celebrated yesterday with some pizza, so that was good.
We did. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question to get us started. Real easy, real softball type of a question. What are some of the best things about being a PK?
Well, I am able to run through the church at night in the dark and know where I'm going. And I also know the hiding spots in the church.
You're still a big kid.
Yes.
You need to grow up.
I don't know. It's fun to run around the church. I probably shouldn't be admitting that, but
you're halfway to 50 and you still think like a child PK. That's cute.
Yeah, like when I'm saying this, I'm remembering my 5th and 6th grade years, our lock-in that we had, and it's just good memories. I still feel that way, the mindset. So anyway, I can hide and I can run.
You still run though, not in the nighttime. You still run during the day.
That's true sometimes.
I'll be in my office and I'll hear the thump 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 thump. And
is true.
You and I are the only ones in the church, so
Gabe's running.
Gabe's
She's
running
down
to do
the hall
something.
Again. Yes.
I also hear you sing in the church,
Sometimes
which is cute.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, what else? What else is
those are
great
pretty
about
good
being
perks.
a PK?
I would also say sometimes we get leftover food. And like from events. And sometimes it's like, here's the extra baked beans. And we're like, yes, thank you. It's true. It's things like that.
And then your house smells.
Maybe not.
What else?
That's what I can think of at the... Oh, yeah. I guess one thing also would be people know who you are.
Okay. So what...
Which is cool.
So what are some of the inherent struggles that you've faced as a PK?
Right. Well, people know who you are.
So it's a blessing and a curse?
Yeah, they know your business, your life. It can be tougher.
When we did pre-show, we kind of talked around this, but I'm curious to ask. It's not something I even have on my iPad, but do you feel like it's more difficult or not difficult at all to develop friendships as a PK? Because I know as a pastor, it is very difficult for us to develop friendships sometimes with people in our church because we still have to be pastor. Do you feel that way, that trickles down to pastors' kids?
My first thought is yes, super hard. But it probably isn't for everyone, and it probably doesn't have to be. But it is, I think, for some reasons, hard
What do you
to
think?
make friends.
What do you think that stems from?
I think some people put PKs like in a different mindset, like they're different than us. So.
Well, and I wonder. I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I would think, especially if a church has history of pastors not sticking around a long time, it's hard to develop friendships with somebody you know might be leaving in X number of years.
Yeah, that's
They're not going to
true.
be around forever. So, although I think that's probably less so now because we're so connected, social media and FaceTime and all of these things that we have to stay connected. Maybe that's not nearly as big an issue as it used to be.
And I didn't really move a lot, like ever.
I mean, you
so I
spent
don't have a lot
14
of
years in
with
one spot.
Yeah,
I mean, that was pretty
much
amazing.
my whole childhood. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So there are, if you're not a church person or you're new to the church, you probably don't know this, but if you are a longtime church person, you will know this. There are some stereotypes that are pretty common amongst PKs, or for what PKs are like. The first one is the goody two shoes stereotype that they're essentially sheltered, and so they don't know what's going on in the world, and they are idealized as being the good kids all the time. Then there is the stereotype that they rebel against all of the good stuff, right? And I think both of us know people in the ministry life that have gone that direction as PKs. We also have you guys also have the stereotype of being people who know the Bible better just because you have a pastor as a mom or a dad. And
that's not true.
There's also the stereotype that pastors' kids are free labor for the church.
That's true.
And that probably, of the four of them, is probably the most common and probably the one that most people, consciously or unconsciously within the church, probably buy into the most.
I would agree. Or they assume we know where stuff goes, or
right.
assume you can stack these chairs afterwards. Now, I should preface and say, like, our family, my parents did a super good job of not letting us be free labor for the church. So I don't have a ton of history with that because we really did keep them separate. So I didn't do a ton of chair stacking as a child, like other PKs.
And we're going to get to this in a bit, but you particularly amongst your siblings have taken a much different track when it comes to life within the church body. So we're going to get there in a bit.
Okay.
People at our church already know where I'm going with that, but if you don't go to our church, you may not quite understand where I'm heading with this, but we'll get there. I think there are, and tell me if you disagree, but I think there are three main reasons that some PKs struggle in the life of a PK. The first one is when a pastor, their parent, is married to the church, spends way too much time with church people, way too much time comparatively with the family, way too much time, working at the church, at church events and all of those things. And so would you agree that that's one main reason that PKs tend to struggle, because they're not getting that parental involvement that they kind of get bitter against the church for that?
Oh, you're at the church again. Still. Yeah, I could see that.
I would imagine that develops a bitterness between the PK and the church as they blame. I think it would rightfully blame the church for stealing your parent away.
Right. Yeah, or causing so much.
I've heard a PK say,
making us move.
Yeah. And I've heard a PK tell me that they felt like their parent, who is a pastor, of course, was more concerned or loved the kids that they served at the church more than they loved them. And that's tough. I mean, so if you're a pastor today, or you're an aspiring pastor, maybe you're in school, whatever, I would strongly encourage you to make sure you make that a priority, because as a pastor myself with two kids, I know your dad, and our friendship, our relationship, that is something both of us are very concerned about. We want to make sure that our children don't ever have a bitterness towards the church because we're so hyper involved. I mean, it is our job. we have responsibilities. Anybody who thinks that being a pastor is a 40-hour-a-week job is nuts. I mean, that's just not true.
Yeah.
But having said that, it is responsibility for us to take care of our home first, to disciple our children and our wives, our husbands, depending on who you're married to, first. You know, I think that's priority. So that's the first one. First reason that I think a lot of PKs who do struggle, that's one of the reasons they struggle. Second one is, you kind of mentioned this earlier, but it's what we call the glass house effect. And not that you throw a brick in a glass house like the cliche goes. No, it's more that your family as a pastoral family is so visible to the congregation. I know as a pastor, it's really hard to shield your kids from that visibility. And in fact, it's almost impossible, at least to entirely shelter your kids away from the sight of your church family. Do you feel like that's a real concern, that kids feel like they're always under a microscope and being?
I would probably say yes. I remember like when I was younger, I definitely felt it. Like, oh man, people are always watching me. But I don't think it can be I think it's as bad as you make it, probably. Like,
Sure.
I know like my dad and mom did a really good job at like boundaries, like leaving work at work, home at home, generally speaking.
Right.
I mean, like often your faith intertwines, as it should, with work and home and stuff. But yeah, I think they did a pretty good job of I just lost my thought.
No, that's
of the boundary, like not letting us be in the spotlight.
Sure.
Or the glass house as much. So.
I think the second part of the glass house effect is also and we're going to talk about unrealistic expectations in a moment, but the idea that because you're a pastor's kid, therefore you know everything that's going on within the church. And
oh yeah,
you know, whether it's, hey, so-and-so is sick with this, or have you heard about so-and-so, or do you know where, you kind of mentioned this earlier, do you know where this goes?
oh yeah.
You know, do you know what's going on this date at the church? And PKs, if their parents are doing it the right way, shouldn't really know all that stuff unless it's
Correct.
their ministry they're involved in. They
Right.
shouldn't necessarily know what's going on in the inner workings of the church. That's not their
That's true.
responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they know, like if I would have known too much about the church life and staff stuff and people stuff, I would have been like, this church thing is crazy. I don't like it at all. But I think my parents gave us space to like figure out where we fit in the church, and in our faith on our own. And so I kind of did have a more unclouded view, probably. Not like completely, like we know some stuff, but not really. Like, I don't know what's going on with your family.
Sure. You know, as pastors, we go through with families and individuals ugly, tough, you know, messed up, nasty situations. People think that we share that with our families.
Oh, yeah.
And oftentimes I don't even share some of that stuff, a lot of that stuff, with my spouse unless it directly affects her. Because in the same way, I don't want my kids or my wife to have a negative view of anybody. Like, that's for me. That's my responsibility as the pastor to handle that situation, help walk people through those situations. It's not for our families to deal with. And so, again, if you're a pastor and you are involving your children and your wife or your husband, if you know, in those sorts of situations, don't.
Yeah, especially the kids. I mean, I think the kids I think they take in what you're saying so much, or it will affect their view of Christ and the church. So, yeah, I feel super blessed. Like, I didn't see a ton of that interpersonal stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the principle there is if you wouldn't tell other kids in the youth group or other kids in the kids ministry, don't tell your own kids. Like, it's not their business to know.
I mean,
those
like,
things.
sometimes there's perks of knowing things like about an event or like cool stuff.
Like
I will say
which band's coming and those sorts of things ahead of time.
Exactly. Or like, hey, here's where the coffee and hot chocolate's kept.
Again, we didn't talk about this in pre-show, but you just brought it up and it made me think about it. Your brother Garrick, every time we like lock down a band or whatever, like he's, oh, no way.
Well, yeah, because I'm like, hey, Garrick, don't tell anyone, but like, you can know this because you're the PK. Like, I've told your kid, like, hey, here's this hiding spot. Hey, we have to go check out this spot. Like, no one knows. There's fun stuff like that are perks.
Yeah, and there's a camaraderie
Knowledge
amongst
only.
you guys as PKs that again, because there's a separation there between you and other kids within the church, it's a camaraderie you guys share with each other that nobody else really can be a part of that club. It's
I like hanging out with your kids because it's like.
Well, I like when you babysit my kids because they like you.
Well, that's good.
So the last reason that I think, I mean, there may be more, but the last that I think are main reasons why PKs tend to struggle is the idea of unrealistic expectations being put on them. Do you feel like what are some examples or unrealistic expectations you've seen or felt put on you as a PK?
I feel like we just talked about this kind of like knowing where to put the glue stick or what's happening at this event, or would you pray for us as we get our group started, or would you explain this word that we don't know in the Bible, or like all the Bible knowledge, like, oh, you'll read the scripture for us, right? Or pray for us before we eat. I'm like,
yep, I was gonna say that last one.
You're a pastor's kid, you can do this. Like, I heard that in elementary school, especially in middle school. I was like, like friends would say, oh, let Gabe do it. Like, she's pastor's kid, she can pray. She's worthy to pray.
Yep.
Like, what?
I think and I'm guilty of this even as a student pastor, because I've got your youngest brother and he's the first PK I've had in my student ministry. I've had PKs in kids ministry when I've been involved in kids ministry before, but it's a different thing when you have a student who's a PK in student ministry or even like young adult ministry, because there's an expectation again, and I've been guilty of having this unrealistic expectation that, well, you're a PK, so you probably know where things are in the Bible, and you probably, have Bible verses memorized, right. And, you're probably comfortable with praying, and so calling on them to pray all the time.
They're your fallback answer. Like, no one else is answering.
Right.
Will you tell us, Gabe? Do you know?
Yeah. So how does that make a PK feel when those sorts of expectations are always levied on you?
Well, like, I feel like when I was younger, when I would first start to hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm a pastor's kid. Like, you're right. My dad is the one who drives the big bus to the school. You're right. Like, that's me. And then, like, it kept happening, and they're like, oh, would you pray? Would you know this? Come on, you should know this. I'm like, okay. But
does it get overwhelming?
That doesn't seem fair for you to say that all the time. Like, you're a Christian too, right? Like, you can pray. Why me?
Yeah.
I remember thinking that kind of, I don't know. I don't think I ever got too down about it. It was just like, oh, seriously, why do you keep saying that?
Yeah. And so the other thing I would, just to wrap up this part of our conversation, if you're a PK and you're watching this and you've struggled, hey, our hearts go out to you. I mean, that's it. We understand the struggle that PKs go through and the lifestyle shifts that, I mean, my oldest daughter has had to move multiple times, much more than you ever had to move at her age. She's had to deal with the pain that my wife and I have had when we've left churches in not so fun ways. And, she knows, she can tell. I mean, kids are attentive enough and smart enough to see mom and dad are hurting. And so, when we take slings and arrows as, the pastoral couple, our kids see that, when we take it from the church, because pastors take it on the chin and so do our wives. I mean, if you're a husband and your wife is the pastor, whatever, you guys, the pastoral couple takes it on the chin sometimes in church life. That's just part of the deal. And so our kids experience that, and sometimes we can't shield our kids from that. I mean, they're just going to notice that something's wrong sometimes. but I would just urge you, just make sure that you're putting family first, not the church.
Yep.
Now, there is a different PK relationship that until I came here, I had never experienced before in regards to church life. And you are the one that is the center of this.
Wow.
And so I want to, for particularly our church people who are watching this, I think it'll be really interesting for them to hear from you on this. But I want to talk about PKs who work for their pastor parent in the church. Now I've seen, not in my particular ministry, but in other ministries, the pastor and their son or their daughter is a pastor under them, serving on staff, and those sorts of things happen, I wouldn't say all the time, but they do happen frequently. But what I've not seen and certainly not experienced in ministry is a administration position under the PK under their parent. And so in this case, obviously, your dad is the lead pastor here, but he's also your boss, as we called him earlier, Boss Daddy.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure he's going to love that title, by the way.
That's funny.
So let me just lay out. There are probably some implications that your dad had to work through before even bringing you on staff. So, of course, anytime you have a boss who has a family member working under them, there's always the, nepotism and having to worry about, I got to be if you're in the right mind, be full of integrity in this and make sure that everything that I do with that family member is above board and that there's accountability and all of those things.
Yep.
And I can say, as somebody who's not a voting member of our board, but somebody who's on the board and watches how accountability is done, and also just watching your interactions with your dad, there has always been accountability in that position. You've obviously been on staff longer than I have, but tell me, just to start, what's it like relationship-wise? What's it been like? How did the process even begin for you to be on staff under your dad's leadership?
Well, I needed a job.
And you went to school for it.
I had moved here, and I had a part-time job, but I needed something more. And it was just a time, and I was approached, and they said, "Hey, we are hiring, and we think you'd be a good fit." And it wasn't ever I'll help you out because you're my daughter. I can see you need some help for now. Here's a job. It was no, you're what we're looking for. You're you're hired for your job or your abilities.
Part of it too is you did follow somebody who was here for 22 years in that position, right?
It was a little interesting to start working here.
I mean,
was how do I do this?
And she's a part of our church. She's awesome, and I mean, an integral part of our church family. But I mean, again, she served for 20 plus years as the church administrator. And so, I mean, number one, you've got to follow that, right?
Right.
So somebody who's been doing this and did it really well for a long time. And then on top of it, you have to figure out a whole new dynamic to your father-daughter relationship.
Yeah. So, I mean, it started here's a job. We're hiring you for this. But also, I'm your boss right now. I mean, of course I love you. You're my daughter. But this is work. And we'll talk about your questions about insurance and baking at home, not during the day at work or whatever. We separated our conversation. Here's work stuff, here's home stuff. And that's been something we've been really careful about the whole time. Boundaries are important. Leaving work at work, especially for me, I'm not a pastor, so it doesn't, I can have hours, some more strict boundaries than maybe pastors.
Right. Well, I mean, you don't have to deal with the relationship stuff.
Exactly.
Nearly like we do.
I can leave work at work. I've come to do better at it, I think. And I mean, even at home, we're we don't talk about work stuff. We're not talking about the events that are coming up or the calendars. We're not planning stuff behind the scenes.
And that's not just for your benefit either. That's for the benefit of your whole family, right?
Whole family. Yeah. I mean, I think my whole life, my dad's been really good about leaving the work at the work and not talking about all that. So it hasn't been that hard, but there are times where like, oh, I have a work question for you. Can you take a couple seconds? Or it's like, oh, I'm going to write this down, so I'll talk to you about it tomorrow at work.
Sure.
Yeah, so boundaries have been important, and we've still like have a good relationship now, like father-daughter. So yeah, he's my pastor, my boss, and my dad. It's a lot.
It's like a lot of hats he's got to wear.
Pastor, boss, daddy.
Pastor, boss, daddy.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that is interesting when you talk about that work relationship and leaving work at work and, home at home,
right.
The pandemic has really, for the last year and a half, has really sent us as a staff through a loop. Now, you and I, we spent much of my beginning time at the church together a lot working because your dad was out of the office and had an illness. And so it was really, the church was left to us to maintain.
Kind of. It felt like it sometimes.
At least for, a month or two. You and I pretty much made sure that things happened and the lights stayed on, and so to speak, and all of that. And then the pandemic hit and everything went home.
Yep.
And so all of us, your dad, yourself, me, we tried to work from home. For me, it was very unsuccessful. I had a infant, newborn, and I also had my 9-year-old at the time who, was trying to figure out online school, and, it was a difficult thing. There were a lot of distractions at home that I could not focus my attention on, writing messages for our student ministry and all of the things that I need to do on my daily basis. And so I ended up coming back to the office pretty quick.
Yeah, you did.
I think it was like maybe 2 weeks.
A day in. No, I'm kidding.
It was pretty quick. I mean, it was a week or two, and I was done with home working. So, but you guys, you brought work home and stayed at home until, really pretty recent. So, you talk about separating home and work. How do you do that when pandemic forced you guys home?
Yeah.
And you had to, be in the same house working together and have your own spaces and all of that.
Well, for Zoom call staff meetings.
That was fun.
For months.
Not really. It was actually awful, and I would never want to do it again.
I would sure to have my own computer, and he would have his own computer. I think a couple times, maybe if my computer wasn't working, I would suggest it, but I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. But he would sit outside, and maybe I would be outside in a different area or in my bedroom, which I didn't like, but we don't have extra space really. My brother was a missionary in Australia, so sometimes we would sit in his bedroom, which the internet was awful, but it was a separate place. So it was trying to separate our workspaces was important. Sometimes we would have dining room staff meetings, where we're talking about stuff, or late night Saturday stuff, getting ready for Sunday's online service. Mm-hmm. That was stressful. But still, I would take phone calls or stuff kind of away from the family. I would try to do my work kind of away or put in my headphones and just try to be in my own space kind of. And then we wouldn't talk about it. We had to talk about some stuff. It's sure. Impossible not to. But for the most part, we designated work stuff to working hours, right, as flexible as those were. And we were working a ton more than normal. So it was, the whole boundary thing was a little interesting, but I think sometimes we'd give some preface hey, Dad, I have a work question. Is this a good time? Or, we would always say a work question. Do you have a second for this? Sometimes he would text me a question. I can text back real quick, even if we're sitting in the living room with the whole family. That way the
family is not involved in the conversation.
Right. They don't have to know if I sent the email to whatever. It just disrupts our family time or whatever else is going on. So we try to keep it kind of private, but our house, we don't have extra rooms. So it was interesting.
So one of the things that I have as a outside observer I'm kind of involved, I guess, but as an outside observer watching how your interaction with your father, it's actually been very impressive to me to see that it hasn't affected your daddy-daughter type of relationship, and to know that there is integrity in the relationship for work between you and your dad. I know that your dad has held both of us accountable in our work situation, and particularly how we work together, because the reality is you're involved in both of the ministry areas that I'm directly over
as a volunteer.
Like
I'm serving.
Yeah. And so there have been times, more than once, I would say, that you and I have had a hard time separating individually or corporately together what is volunteer and what is work time. And so, or actual work for you. And so we've had to figure that out, because those first 6 months, everything was work. Because we were trying to make.
Right. But yeah, now I'm like a lot more like spending some more time on you stuff. And so I do. I am like, well, today I talked for Pastor Michael for an extra hour more than necessary. So I'll take that off my timesheet. And I make it up later.
We may talk about that more later, but what has been awesome is like we did this full conversion of our website and our app, church app, and all of that, giving platform and all of those things. And you and I worked side by side, and it was really one of the first times that you and I worked side by side on a project for the church that wasn't youth or worship ministry related.
That's true.
I just realized
it was kind of odd,
but it was great, because we got to work hand in hand to make a significant change to our church's internet and
our
online presence. Yeah. So anyway, I just want you to know, like, I'm impressed at how you and your dad handle your working relationship. It's fun to watch. And it's a fun staff to be a part of. Our staff meetings are great, especially when your dad takes us for, I don't drink coffee, but takes us for,
coffee,
the burritos and the coffee.
Yeah. It's been fun. I've been working here for 6 years.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
I didn't really plan on being here this long, but it's been fun to watch. I don't know. I've come to love different parts of it more as time goes on, and yeah.
So if you have any questions, can't say we'll answer all of them, but if you have a question specifically for Gabrielle, work related, you can certainly call the office or email, or you can put it in the comments, I suppose. We'll see it.
Or just curious questions. Leave a comment.
Yeah. Hopefully they're not too personal.
No.
Because then you turn red.
I didn't want to say, like, for work stuff, please call me at my office hours.
What are your office hours?
Well, it's 9 to 2, technically.
Monday through Thursday. There you go. But yes, if you do ask her anything that's like semi-embarrassing, she will turn, like, her face will go bright red.
I'm just
like bright red,
DNA,
like this brick.
Okay.
Like, it's great.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Great.
I love asking you embarrassing questions sometimes.
Keep going.
So, speaking of embarrassing questions, we have finished our conversation on PKs. So if you have questions or you have thoughts on the PK stuff, please put it in the comment section. We'd love to engage with you on that. But
if you're a PK listening, find me on Instagram.
Yeah, hey, you can be PKs together on Instagram. I'm going to give you an opportunity today to do two things. The first thing is ask PM anything. That's my nickname at the church, PM, Pastor Mike, PM.
Ask
right?
you anything.
So ask me anything. I'm going to give you one chance, one question that you want to know, something that is like burning on your heart that you know a lot about me at this point. We've got a good friendship. So, but what's something that you don't know that you want to know? Okay. You think about that.
I got it.
Oh, you got it?
Because it's payback.
Oh, boy.
Scrunch or fold.
They don't understand that.
Yeah, they
question.
do. Just say it. Just one word and they'll laugh. Just say it.
So I either fold or roll.
Okay.
Like roll it around my hand.
That's a good. Just think about it.
It's clean. It's
you don't have to say anymore. It's a student ministry thing.
See, that's not embarrassing to me, though.
Whatever.
So you had the opportunity to get me bright
know,
red. Because, like, if I get bright red, my whole Chrome dome turns bright red.
I'll have to start a note section on my phone. Embarrassing for Pastor.
If you have embarrassing questions you want to ask, you can go ahead and ask them, and maybe at some point we'll work it into the
I'm not good at that stuff.
the podcast. So
Okay. What's next?
the second thing you have an opportunity to do is, I think our audience would be interested to hear from the office manager's perspective. Again, because you and I work so close to each other every day.
Yes.
They probably wouldn't want to know this about your dad, so we should probably add something into about your dad too, not just me. But
yeah, but you're the one here.
But I'm the one here today. What is one of my quirks or interesting things that you have seen working with me that you find funny or interesting that our audience will,
Yeah. Well, I have never had a youth pastor working in the same office, so I was not prepared for the sheer amount of pizza that we would have delivered.
I don't know if that's a youth pastor thing. That's just
yeah,
me
it
thing.
is. No, I think it's probably a youth pastor thing. Well, and yeah, it just for a while, the first 6 months, 4 months, whatever, it was us here trying to figure out what do we do? My dad's not here. Well, in the moment, Pastor Eric. See, I call him Pastor Eric. That's one of our boundaries. I don't call him dad at church unless he's my dad in the moment. Anyway, so pizza or subs. We're we have to eat. We've been here for a long time.
Yeah, that happened. That actually happened yesterday.
Yes.
Because we were
working
yesterday together all morning. So
yeah. Anyway, that was a quirk.
I think the quirk that I would have expected you to say, which I find quirky about me and you, it's just our relationship, our friendship, our working relationship, whatever. But I tend to be the kind of person that, things pop in my head and I need to try and work them out audibly right away. Otherwise, I'm going to stew on it and it's going to end up disappearing and I didn't have an epiphany or something. So during the pandemic, this was really hard because no one was in the office to talk to, and we've talked about it. You don't answer your phone when I call sometimes.
Not
so
always. Sometimes it's inconvenient timing.
It's usually Becky got the brunt of that. My second in command, so to speak, for student ministry. So she would get those calls. But when we're in the office together, what will happen is I'll have one of these thoughts, and I immediately shout it out to you. And then get myself up and walk to the doorway of my office and lean against the door jamb. And what generally should be a 3 to 5 minute conversation max turns into, as you said, an hour-long conversation with the youth pastor. And it could be youth ministry related, or it turns into just a conversation between friends that has nothing to do with church stuff. And it's
I'm I'll take that hour off my timesheet.
It's just a quirk. And the reality is you don't do it as much as I do, but you do the same thing.
I do. It's just we're 20 feet apart, around a wall.
Right.
But we still get up and talk in the doorway. It just happens.
We could just sit in our comfy chairs and, well, your chair's not that comfy,
my chair's so, but I'm not here enough
church
anymore.
People, if you want to buy her a new chair, that'd be great.
Sometimes I roll my chair and I just sit and I talk in your
and then we have impromptu meetings when Becky's here and, whatever. But no, I really do. I mean it when I say it. Our working relationship and her working relationship with her dad, the three of us as a staff, it is a great team. We work really, really well together. I have, since I've been here, appreciated your friendship. I appreciate your heart for our students, your heart for worship ministry, and really the heart for the ministry of this church, the mission of this church. And I don't know if our people fully appreciate the amount of work that you do on a week in and week out basis. I can tell you, church, those who are watching from Hermanaz, I couldn't do my job, and I know Pastor Eric could not do his job without you. You are vital to our team.
Wow.
And so yeah, I mean, it's good to work with you.
Thanks.
All right.
So sweet.
So last segment, we are coming up on the 45-minute mark. So
Yeah,
last segment
hurry.
for today, because these are fun.
It's my
And we
segment
want
now.
you to comment on these. We want to know your answers to these questions. These are would you rather questions.
Would you rather, Pastor Michael,
Yes.
have a booger flicked on you or a bird poop on you?
Booger flicked, for sure. Next.
I would say bird. Would you rather spend 2 days in Legoland or SeaWorld?
I would rather go to SeaWorld just because it's something I want to do, but I can tell you I would go to Legoland more than once.
Agree. Would you rather your only mode of transportation be a donkey or a giraffe?
Giraffe.
Would you
Donkeys
rather...
are stinky.
Yeah, but they're practical. Would you rather your only mode of transportation be a hoverboard or a tandem bike?
If you're talking about the hoverboard from Back to the Future, it'd be that one. But I'm assuming you're talking about the one with the wheels that exists today that's not really a hoverboard. So in that case, it would be the bike.
I would also say tandem bike. It seems more practical.
Sure.
Safer. Hamburgers or pizza for dinners for the rest of your life?
Because it's only dinners, pizza.
I think I'd say hamburgers. Although I was rethinking and I could go either way. Okay, last one. Would you rather have 500 spiders in your bedroom or 1,000 crickets in the rest of your house?
Well, the question seems to suggest that the crickets are not in your room. They're just in the
Correct.
rest of the house.
Mm-hmm.
The spiders, on the other hand, are in your room. So spiders are gross, and they serve a great purpose to our environment
Some
and
of them.
whatnot. But I would take the crickets, no doubt about it.
And then you add a little white noise waterfall in the background. It
Sure.
sounds like you're in the jungle.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. I would probably
Spiders are
say
nasty.
crickets, but
Ugh.
I don't know.
I'm not a spider person. Nasty, nasty insects. Yeah. Okay, so that is the Morning Burrito podcast for today. And just want to give you a couple quick announcements. Number one, City Fest. If you are in Umatilla County or Morrow County here in Oregon,
Wearing my shirt.
really want to encourage you to get out, invite your neighbors, invite your friends to come to City Fest. If you don't know Jesus, it's a great place to hang out. People of all ages. There's a family fun zone for kids. There's also the FMX and BMX bikers who will be here doing all kinds of ramps
On
and
tandem
things.
bikes?
I don't think
I'm
on tandem
kidding.
bikes, but they will be here. And then also we have Danny Goki, We Are Messengers, Marisol Park, George Moss, and Andrew Plow giving a gospel message. So it's going to be a great time in Butte Park here in Hermiston, and it all starts at 3:30 on August 28th. So 2 Saturdays from now. Make sure you are involved and get involved with City Fest. It's going to be great. If you have any questions or want to know more about City Fest, go to cityfest.org. And you can get all the information you need about the week leading up to City Fest and the day of City Fest. And then also, as a part of that weekend, some really cool things that are happening, or a really cool thing for us as a local church is George Moss.
Oh, yeah.
Hip-hop recording artist, he's performing and emceeing City Fest main stage, but he's also going to be with us on Sunday, August 29th.
Yeah.
Doors will open at 6 o'clock here at Hermiston Nazarene Church, and it's going to be a great show. If you are into hip-hop music that makes you want to bounce and move, George Moss has got that for you, and I know there's going to be a packed house, so
There's
make
a lot of
sure
people
you
coming.
get here early, get in line. It's first come, first serve seating starting at 6 o'clock. Bring your masks with you, please, and it's going to be a great time. So again, that's August 29th here at Hermiston Naz.
Whoop, whoop.
So thank you to our church family for sponsoring our
Yuppers.
show, and we will see you next week, 10 a.m., probably live, maybe live. We'll
Maybe.
see.
I might not be here unless you comment. So
Yeah, comment.
kidding.
Gabrielle needs to be on the show.
bye.
Thanks, guys.